Welcome back to the Playbook podcast with me, Michael, and Sharon, the founders of Builders. Builders is a startup studio that empowers entrepreneurs to build stellar companies. And today we're talking to great entrepreneurs from the industry about their learnings, their personal stories, and how they got to where they are today. So today we're talking to Marieke. Could you introduce yourself?
Definitely. I'm Marieke Cozijnsen. I live in Ede. I'm 30 years old. I'm married. I have 2 kids. And to tell you something about myself, I'm the CEO of Adverge. But before that, I've always been, working for an employer. So just since a year, I've started with Adverge, and it's been a great leap. But it's been, such a good ride so far. Yeah.
Great.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah.
And as what you're saying, you have been employed for a super long time in your life, and now you're here and today building your business. Tell me about this transition, the differences, or what do you like to share about that?
Yes, it's very different, of course. I had never imagined myself to be an entrepreneur. So it's not like a typical entrepreneur who, when I hear your story, for example, you've always had that entrepreneur mindset. For me, I've always thought I have a dad as a CEO, so I've always kind of had a role model in a way. And I've always liked the idea of leading a team. But you first, of course, have to experience it before you know if you're any good at it.
Yes.
And so I kind of, in my time at employers, I realized again and again, after about 2 years, I would have done my thing and I would think, okay, and now I want more. Now I need more challenge. And that was, again, at a phase where I was in at that time, manager of a service desk at a software company. And the whole service desk had been transitioned. Everything was running smoothly. Everyone was happy. And the only thing I heard from management was, good job. And that is really nice. But after a while, you get bored again because you think, okay, where is my new challenge? And at that point, a LinkedIn post came by. And they literally said, we are 5 investors looking for a CEO. We have a business idea. The only thing that you need to like or need to have is you have to like building a culture. You have to like building something from scratch. And it's going to be a kind of marketing agency, but marketing knowledge isn't necessary. So I just looked at it and I thought, well, I can send them a message and see where it takes me. And I remember that moment. I remember sending my dad afterwards a message and my brother and saying ha, look at what I just responded on, kind of like they will never reply. And then they replied. and I had great chats with them and it was a really nice vibe. And that's where it started.
And was it only like that feeling of being bored that you thought okay, I'm going to do something different? Or was there already something in your mind where you thought maybe I'm going to do something myself? Or what was the feeling? Nothing?
Yeah. No, so one of the reasons why I had to become an entrepreneur is because I also wanted to be part of the shareholders.
Of course.
So they could have also just employed me, they could have employed me as a CEO.
Yeah.
So, but I also got given the opportunity to also be a shareholder. So, no, even still now, I said it this week to a friend as well, I would still be happy, honestly, working for an employer. I just really like the role. I like the challenge. I like building something from scratch. And that if that's in an entrepreneur role, then that's also fine. But that's not necessary.
It doesn't bring any change or a different feeling for you?
Yes. Oh, yes. It brings a lot of feelings and a lot of change.
Yeah, so that's a big difference.
Yes, it's a very big difference. Yes. Yeah, I think the biggest difference is, for me, for example, if I compare it to being a manager of a service desk, I didn't have any idea about numbers. I thought I need a new person in my team.
Yeah, go get it.
Yeah, I'm allowed, right? Okay, vacancy on. Well, I'm not allowed. I'm only allowed half of. You just have no idea, and then you realize, oh, people are like the most expensive thing to have in your company, and to just have that kind of difference in mindset, and to have to worry because it is worry with a startup, worry about profit and loss. That's so different. Yeah. So do I enjoy that all the time? No. That is very different. That's a roller coaster. And I enjoy the roller coaster most of the time, and sometimes I don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Part of the game, huh?
Yeah.
So becoming part of the cap table, right? Becoming one of the people who co-founded this. Did that mean for you also bring your own cash to the table?
Yeah. 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 For us, it all meant each one of us brings in the same amount. Yeah.
All right. Well, that makes it different, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. For me, it was all my savings.
Yeah.
For them, it wasn't. So that's also different. And I remember the one moment where, because I'm married, we share all our finance. So I had to ask my husband, what do you think? We're putting like all our savings in this. And it was such an endearing moment that he said, wait, but just so I get it right, you're the one who's going to call the shots and who's going to make it work or not work. And I said, yes. And he said, oh, okay, that'll be fine. And then I loved him forever, of course.
That's where you got married.
Yeah, so...
It's a good start.
Yeah.
And they came up with the idea, of course. How did you make this your own? I mean, you're calling the shots, but they're not, looking for somebody like you without a reason.
Yeah.
So what was their problem? Why did they want to start this?
Well, with them, they were typical entrepreneurs. So they were good at thinking of this idea. They loved freedom. They all love freedom. They love being able to plan their own days. They've never liked working for an employer. So they could not see themselves leading a team either. They think staff are, bring loads with them, and they do.
Yeah, they do.
And I love that part. I mean, that is what I experienced as being a team leader, as a manager. I love that. That's what I get out of my bed for, kind of thing. So that is what they were looking for. And I think that's where it clicked, that they can provide me with new ideas and challenge me to get out of my comfort zone. And I can make sure that, the team is happy. And from there, I strongly believe that clients are happy. So yeah, that's what they were mainly looking for.
Very interesting. I think it's mainly the same thing as doing your own startup and finding the investors later.
Yeah, it's the other way around. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a big difference, I imagine, because most will say, hey, look, it's nice to start with the investors. But from where I'm sitting, it makes it, I think, quite a bit more difficult, right? They're expecting something, they're pointing your way. How do you make it your own?
Yeah, I think also if I reflect back on the first maybe 9 months, that is where we were meeting up each week. I would tell them each week, oh, I'm struggling with this and I'm thinking of this and I need help with this. And then at one point, you get to that point where you're near break even and where almost all of the potential clients are saying yes. And that's when they start trusting more in me, but also where I start trusting more in myself.
Hold up, you got to break even pretty quickly. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, you're only doing this for a year?
Yes. Yeah. So we got break even about, I think it was October, November.
All right, let's start there. I mean, it's a people business, I can imagine. Could you take us to like that business model and how you got there? Because, look, I think it's a very interesting parallel between starting your own company and doing this. It looks very similar, but there might be some nuances. I really like to double click if we could.
Yeah.
Tell us about the business itself and how you got there.
So it is a Google Ads agency with just senior marketeers.
Just ads?
Just Google Ads. Yeah. And now also social ads, but it started as just Google advertisements. And they really saw, because I am saying they, because that's how the idea started, the co-founders really saw a pain in the market of where the marketing agency, put a really senior person in front when doing the sales. And then once the client is in, the junior or even the interns, they step in and do the work. And there's such a frustration in the market, with every potential client that we meet. That is the pain and the frustration. And by fully focusing on that, by saying we're just hiring seniors and we're just doing Google Ads, we are specialists and we're kind of like freelancers, because that's why people work with freelancers nowadays, because they think marketing agencies, we don't trust them, we just want one face.
It's one way of looking at it, sure,
Yeah, that's what we see. And so we thought, why if we just do seniors and everyone has one contact person? But if that person is ill or goes on holiday, then you have lots of other seniors, and all those seniors can talk together and learn from each other instead of a freelancer just being on his own. And but that meant that I'm not a Google Ads specialist. And that is where kind of the pain starts, or where it's harder to get to a break-even point, because usually someone is marketeer himself and he thinks, I have too much work and I like the idea of building something bigger. So then I'm slowly going to hire someone extra and going to build from there.
Yep.
That means it's easier to get to that break-even point. For me, it meant that when I've hired my first team member, that he would have had to work for 2 people to get to break even. That's not possible.
Yeah.
So it was really important to get as soon as possible to at least 3 team members to get more near to that break-even point. But that also, of course, meant that we had to have the clients for it, because you can't just have the team members. And what made the difference there is that 3 of the co-founders are Google Ads specialists themselves.
Kind of helps, yeah.
Helps. And that's where it started. They said, I have to keep saying no to all these potential clients because I am full. So that seems like a waste. And one of those co-founders is famous in the Google Ads industry. And and that just makes sure that all of the first leads, the first maybe 20 leads, all came through them, because people were just still knocking on their door saying, can you do my Google Ads? And then they say, no, I can't, but I'm co-founder and I coach the Google Ads specialists at Adverge, etc. That's where it started.
I mean, this might be the hardest part for people to understand, but Google Ads seems like a thing you just click and go, right? I mean, us building companies ourselves, it's an answer for premature scaling to begin with, right? So we do ads and everything will be okay. Then from experience, this might not be the easiest thing to set up, but B, to make it work. I mean, this
And
must
also
be
the timing, right? A lot of people think like, I'm building a business, so let's start ads because that will give me the answer.
Yeah,
but
that will be the answer.
But in the end, we all know that it's most of the time just laziness from founders, just not willing to do the work.
Yeah.
What and how do you see that?
Yeah, that was for us one of the reasons to say that our ideal client has already started working with online advertisements, because then you can really start fine-tuning Google advertisements. And we do free audits. That's how we get to the table for potential clients. We say, we just do free scans of the accounts, and then we present our findings, and then you do what you want to do. You can continue with us, or you can take your findings to your marketing agency, but we'll show you what we think is best.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where what helps us is that most of our potential clients are already using Google Ads, so they know what kind of investment is needed. They know already what they're looking for, what kind of break-even point they have to reach, what their required ROAS is, return on ad spend, etc. And then you can more easily fine-tune from there. We also start sometimes with clients who haven't used ads yet.
Yeah, from scratch, yeah.
Yeah, from scratch. But that's more, then they need to be really ambitious. Because if we do it because our business model, you asked about our business model.
Yeah.
Our business model is that we do not do hourly rates. So we don't say, we look at your Google Ads or your typical company and we have about 6 hours per month or something. We say, okay, based on your Google Ads spend, it's X amount per month. Mm. And then what we think is the most important thing is think of we have to decide an objective together. What's the return on ad spend?
Yep.
Or what is the cost per lead that you're willing to pay? And we are doing everything to reach that target. And then once we start reaching that target, you're willing to scale up. You're saying, okay, I want to spend more on Google Ads. That's where our fee also goes up. Mm. And that's where we can grow with our clients. So we say, your success is our success. And when we have more budget, we have more data, so we have more things to analyze and fine-tune or set up new campaigns. So that's been a successful business model as well, because we don't need to keep going back to the table with our clients to say, okay, but now we need more hours, or here another upsell, or...
Yeah, could you say it's like a percentage of a service fee or something on it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, a lot of parallels again to starting a new company. You're selling to clients only who have experienced the problem and trying to solve it, or it just didn't work.
Definitely. Yeah.
So it's exactly the same thing. I can also imagine setting this up is a hard thing to begin with, and there's no service model in setting it up. It should be an hourly based, right? All right. So you now have a service model.
Yes.
How fast can you get to that success point where you can scale? I mean, is it something very...
It's very no.
Within reach, or
Because, like in the beginning, you of course had a ton of leads
Yes.
from your business
Yeah.
partners.
Yeah.
But now, how is that now? You've never done sales in the past. I can imagine that like these leads will not like never. It's not never endless, right?
Yeah.
So how is that for you now? How is this balance between making sure that you do enough sales and then even like leading the company still?
Yeah, I think that's the thing I found most tricky, because it's kind of what I laugh at now, but we didn't even talk about sales at the start. I mean, they didn't mention sales. They were entrepreneurs. All the leads were coming to them, and they just kind of expected that to continue happening. And so after about 3 weeks, when we started, we thought, oh, this isn't going to happen itself. Like I need to actually do something for that. And they sometimes as well. And so, yes, we are leaning still a lot, because still whenever one of them gives a workshop or they post something on LinkedIn, there's still sometimes leads coming in. And especially the big names come through Bob Meyer, one of the co-founders who's most known.
Yep.
And that helps. But yeah, from day one, I realized I need to build a personal brand. I need to get on LinkedIn. I need to do something like a podcast. I need to join BNI, a business club.
Yeah.
I was just doing all these things where I thought, okay, I'll just keep showing my face and I'll share knowledge and we'll share lots of value. We keep sharing lots of value. And then, so that's still successful now. But but for example, February was a month with 2 leads. But then March was a month with 16 leads. So it's like, it's in that case also a roller coaster, and I think that's the same for every entrepreneur. But
I was imagining that you would answer, you need Google Ads.
I also use Google Ads, definitely.
For some reason.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a lot of seasonality in this type of business?
Yes, I think you really see that, for example, Valentine's Day, Christmas, Black Friday,
Events.
and all those things, they play a part. And then for some companies, you really see, for example, especially the outdoor companies, you really see that they start back up in March and they scale back down in October. So you have to think also things like tooling for gardening, but also gardening companies, but also Monday I'm speaking someone with barbecue web shop. You know, those kind of, they are all very typical and have lots of, and we have a fishing web shop. You know, they all have seasonality, but we don't really, if we look at all our clients, we don't feel it in our business. But you really have to take it into account with each client individually.
But there is a up and down then, right? So how does that influence your business model? If it's a...
So it influences it. Yeah, definitely. So you see that especially, you see that for I think it would be about a quarter or less, maybe a fifth, that they really scale down, for example, during the Christmas period. For now, I've only done it a year. So for now, I haven't had that burden of really feeling that, that also makes a big difference in our cash flow. But it could. But then again, that's also the Christmas months and those kind of things. So then another client will, scale up in those moments. So for now, I don't see a problem, but we'll see.
Talk to me in a bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you're only working with seniors. They're hard to get. They like not to be all the time hands-on, right? So it's a very specialized group of people.
Besides that, they love to be a freelancer most of the time.
Yes.
Are they?
No, they all work for us for Adverge. So they're all employee. But the reason that they come to us and why they're not hard to find yet is because of the co-founders. So they really want to work with one of those co-founders. They really want to work with fellow seniors.
Yeah.
So next week again, I have 2 job interviews with people who are freelancers now, but they're missing their colleagues. They're missing that they can learn more because they need to get behind a workshop and do a course online to learn more. So for now it's not been an issue yet, because that is literally also the pain that they're feeling. Either seniors in marketing agencies, they feel like they're the smartest in the room, or freelancers, they feel either lonely or kind of that they're stagnating at their level.
So now if you are having all the seniors in your company, you're stealing them everywhere.
Yes.
2 things come to mind though. How do you make sure you don't become that same agency? And B, look, if you get bored after 2 years and move on, is it a cultural thing you maybe envision for yourself, growth, and then move on? Or is it something you want to change in this company?
Yeah, I think it's mainly by especially keep looking at new challenges. So for now, also, like I said, a month ago, we've started with social ads.
Yeah.
So, you keep looking for new opportunities, and you have more of an opportunity of that in this kind of company. And I also see that with my employees, my team, they can indicate more of what kind of clients they would like and what they get energy from. And yeah, they can work remote. So whether, most of them work remote all the time, and some of them come on the Wednesday to the office. But they just feel so much freedom that for now I don't see
That happening at all.
No, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So one of our employees continuously is in Thailand and works from there. But yeah, it just requires a specific mindset, a specific sense of responsibility. And you can select on that beforehand. Whereas when you become a manager at, for example, a service desk, you don't select the people based on can they work remote, can they, do they have that kind of, that's different, selection.
And what do you think of that difference, working remote of being full in the office? What do you prefer?
I prefer being in the office. That's because I'm also, I'm a mom. I like my 9 to 5 because that gives me predictability. I don't like working at home with my small children because they will just keep barging in. But so I've decided from day one to take an office. And it is harder of course, to really sense what's going on with your team, where I used to know all the ins and outs of each team member, which wasn't always very healthy. But now I just really need to have a proper sit down, and it's a bit more forced, whereas usually it's more natural, where you go for a walk with lunch and you talk, so it's a bit more forced. So I need to get used to that as well. I need to get used to that. I do not need to know all the ins and outs. They are also senior enough or responsible enough to tell me when there's something going on, but I also need to provide them the opportunity to tell me what's going on. So finding a bit balance in that. Yeah.
Hey, it means also scaling outside of the country, or you're working primarily with Dutch-based people?
No. It's for now. It is Dutch employees because most of our potential clients are Dutch. But our
course content.
But our content's all English. But we just see, because they come through the co-founders, and they are all Dutch. We just see that all our potential clients are Dutch. Via our own Google Ads, we are also on international campaigns, etc. So we have one Canadian, one English client, and our idea is indeed because it's remote, to grow internationally, and in employees, but also in clients. So, yeah.
I can imagine that happening. So, look, if I'm now listening to this or looking at this, and I'm doing ads, we all know how painful that is, or how difficult it is to get the result you want. And once it works, it's a moving target, right? It's never done. So in this day and age, why do you have a reason to exist if everything becomes, let's say AI does everything, or tech is able to see what needs to be changed? Why is there such a big role for you guys still?
Yeah, I think that is where it now makes a difference whether you're a junior or an intern or a senior, because it's not anymore about just the keywords or understanding your target audience or having a nice video. It's now more about making sure that you understand Google as far as you can.
Yeah.
So understand the technical side of things. And for me, it's the most important thing that our senior marketeers can do everything from A to Z, which is related to Google Ads. And therefore, that also means tracking, making sure tracking is implemented from scratch. That's always our step one.
Yeah.
And you see so many times that that's not in place. And when you have tracking in place, you have all the data coming in. And Google makes an interpretation of that data. And you see that we get less and less input we get less insight into that data. And that makes it more tricky. So you need to really think more technical. You need to think, what does the algorithm of Google need to perform optimally?
Yeah.
And that means, for example, 3 years ago, it meant that you needed to have 10 campaigns to target 10 groups of people or different types of products. Whereas now they say, throw it all together. But in that campaign, make segments, because all the algorithm goes on the campaign level of Google.
Yep.
But if we dive into the accounts of people, we do not see that. We see it being used, the way that Google used to do it 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So all those kind of things, to have that knowledge, to know what Google needs to perform optimally, and to make sure that you can, as soon as possible, turn on the smart bidding strategy of Google.
Yeah.
And that is key. And people try that sometimes without the proper knowledge, and they turn it on, and then it all goes flat, and you get no leads anymore because you, for example, don't have enough data. Google can't do anything with a bidding strategy if there's not enough data. Anyways, I can.
Well, you can go on. That's how it is, right? So, if it's that tedious, small, finite, haven't you guys productized a piece of this? It feels like the big part of it is just making. It's like the foundation needs to be good.
Yeah. Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
So, but if that's the same every time, how did you guys do that? It seems like a very good place to start.
Yeah, but you still see that in every industry, in every in every type of business, it needs a different approach. Like, for example, of course, there's a big difference between e-commerce and lead generation. So those are definitely two different types. But it also depends, because if you, for example, are spending 30,000 per month, then it's a lot more data, and then you can segment those campaigns much more.
Yeah.
But to get back to your question, to productize it, yeah, it doesn't seem possible, because you need to keep acting, because people say, what do? You do a setup and then you're done, right? But because you keep looking at the data that you still see, and you keep changing your campaigns according to the data. What does it need? And for example, you always have something called a DSA, where for example, all the keywords come in which you don't think would trigger a conversion, but they did.
Yeah.
Then you think, okay, maybe I need to set up a new advertisement for that keyword, and you just keep doing trial and error and seeing what the data does with that. So I think that's the main thing I know that's the main thing, that what they do day in, day out.
Yeah.
So we sometimes talk to potential clients, and they say, isn't it just one setup? And I say, sure, we can do one setup for you.
Yeah.
And we don't sometimes do that, especially for startups. If we say, you would already benefit from one great setup.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's all about analyzing that data and changing everything accordingly. And keep having.
I think a lot of people do not even know that.
No.
They really think, okay, you set it up and this is it.
Yeah.
But if you really want to do it good, you need to check this like multiple times a day.
Yeah.
And then I know that you also do not have the knowledge behind that. But if you're looking at it like on a daily basis or multiple times a day, then you can make a difference by changing it at that specific time.
And also, where I feel like there's what's the most value is having that chat with the entrepreneurs. So the Google Ad specialists are continually aligned with the people running the business, because they need to know, how far can we go with the cost per lead? How far can we go with the return on ad spend? And what's more important, volume or profit?
Yeah.
And to keep realigning on that and saying, we can do this, but this will cost you this extra, according to Google Ads budget, or to keep having that conversation and to really understand the business model. And the Google Ad specialists sometimes say, I just feel like a business coach sometimes. Because you keep, reevaluating everything with them. Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's so difficult, why did Google make it so difficult? So it's weird, right? So
Or why does it change so much?
Yeah.
It's changing like...
What I think is, they would like you to need Google more and more and more. But this is an assumption. But what you see is that, of course, Google also has something called Google Reps, Google Account Reps, and they call all of our clients as well, and they call all of the companies using Google Ads. And then they give lots of advice on how to
make it happen. Yeah.
But also how to spend more money, because that's how they have their revenue. I think it's 85% of the revenue for Google is Google Ads. So I feel like they want us to be more and more dependent on them. But in the end, it also means that sometimes people turn off Google. But it's so essential, because 80% of the people searching is still Google, doing it on Google. And sure, TikTok is up and coming. And we also do Microsoft Ads, because Microsoft, also has a search engine. But still, but why they make it so hard? Yeah, I feel like it's a little bit of that, but...
They want that you use it more and more. But with AI coming by, you also see like a lot of transitions there, in that you actually can do less and less.
Yeah.
So how is that from your point of view, how do you see that?
Yeah, I feel that that it's more and more important that we just learn to interpret the data that we get given.
Yeah.
And so that means that where we used to have 100% of the data, we now sometimes have only 70% of the data. Everyone has that amount of data. So that helps, because that means that everyone's playing the same game kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it does make it more difficult. And that's where, for example, things like scripts come in. So we use quite a few custom scripts where you can still see a bit more data. And, once you get into the kind of field and the interest of Google Ads, you have a whole, community where everyone shares all the knowledge, which helps you understand more and more. But it has just become way more technical and way more about data than anything else. And you see that, people used to also call it Google's algorithm is Google's AI. You see that, you can trust more and more on that algorithm, but you just need to understand it more and more. So, you need to keep up to date.
Do you have a certain point of view on that?
I do. But the question here is not, if Google is going to outcompete you or be smarter at this. They're going to be, right? If you're going to go to Bing or social, whatever works. I mean, it's awareness or it's product related, whatever you'd like to do. From a starting up point of view, right? Starting from zero, I do believe it's getting more and more important to know which data to capture before we call you. But B, can have some smart insights on the data I have, right? Just putting the raw data into... I mean, if you're listening to this and you're very smart, you put this into a big database, ETL or something, how do you know what to do? Because as a customer for you, if I'm unknowledgeable about a subject, I'm not going to be your customer, right? I first need to feel the pain and what went wrong. So I still feel like, and maybe there's advice from you there, is can technology get me to the first, let's say, bigger step, right? Because as a company starting up, I feel like I have product market fit, I need to scale up. Google Ads, and from experience, it's very powerful. It's one of the most powerful tools you could use to scale up. But I need to get there, right? So if there's not something, helping me to get there, I feel like this is a very hard play for most to get Google, Ads or any spend to begin with, because it's not affordable. Like you're talking consumer web shops and stuff like that.
Yes.
So they're spending hundreds of thousands every month. Yes. But getting there, what would be your go-to? What should we do to get to wanting to be your customer, basically? The first steps might be the most intricate.
What are the signals you need to have to at least get to the point?
I think the most important thing where it starts is your website, because we can send a lot of traffic to your website, but if it doesn't convert, nothing happens. And it only costs money if someone converts or when someone clicks, and then it would be great if you don't lose money because that person actually converts. So fills in the contact form, takes the action. Mm-hmm. So what we do is we also very often work with CRO specialists. They look at the UX of a website. That is where it all starts. So I think if you have a very good website and which you already have experts having looked at that it's got a good UX, that it's fast, because very often people click away from the ads because it loads more than 3 seconds, and it's proven that 90% clicks away after a loading time of 3 seconds. So I think it all starts with your website, and if you already join your Google Analytics, your it's now called GA4, to your website, then you can start tracking what just organic visitors do on your website, and if you see that they convert well. And if not, you need to do something about it. But once they start converting well, then it's more of a good opportunity to start introducing Google Ads.
Could you then say, if you're starting something and it doesn't convert through whatever you're doing right now, it's spending will never change it?
No, that's exactly right. So we also have, for example, we actually said goodbye to one of our clients this week, and I'm always sad to see one go. But that is the chat that at one point you have, because they were twice the price of their competitors, and all these things matter. You have to look at your competitors. You have to look at your website, and sorry, get me back to your initial question.
No. My initial question is how to get there in the beginning, right? So for example, I have a lot of experience with building B2B companies. Of course, it's very important to convert there. But for some reason, there's always an excuse, right?
Yes.
And I think the best excuse is, you change your website. You just said it. Oh, your website isn't good enough. Okay, but there's not a lot of learning when there's no data, right? So the first steps is getting that data there or getting visitors there to begin
Yes.
with if you're not doing outreach. Then the logical thing comes back and say, hey, do ads because traffic.
Yeah.
But it seems to be getting a lot of fake data there. And an important learning there is then first make sure that you call your CRO specialist if you have one.
Yeah.
But I think the thing here is it's basically a symptom of something else. If it doesn't work, I mean, we're saying, hey,
Like pricing,
yeah, or maybe it's just you're building something nobody wants.
Exactly.
Right. So it should not be an excuse to begin with. I think that's the biggest point here. And the thing I've noticed myself, and that's my big ask to you, if we need to get that data first and have it in order for you to say something valuable, which data am I capturing? Okay, we get it. We do Google Analytics. Is there any, give us the trade secret. What's there? What do we really need to do?
Well, what we always do when we do start from scratch is we look, first of all, most important thing is search volume. So usually the person knows quite well, the entrepreneur knows quite well what they think their ideal client customer looks for on Google. And if there isn't a lot of search volume, that is already an indicator for us that Google Ads isn't going to work.
Yeah.
One of the clients that we were going to do Google Ads for, we just realized there's no one is searching on this yet. It's a great idea, but it's a great idea perhaps in 2 years when people know that could be solving their problem or whatever.
Yeah.
So then it could be more interesting to look at things like social ads, because then you're looking more at brand awareness, at triggering someone that to let them know, oh, you actually
need to
have a
guide
problem.
them.
Yeah.
Is that the reason you went into that?
Yeah, also. Yeah, because you see that, one, it's important for retargeting. So now we just did retargeting on Google Ads. So you saw banners sometimes on your website. But social ads is also interesting for that. But also, for example, now we're looking at a whole new product which still needs a pre-order. And it's so new technical that people they wouldn't Google for that. They need to see it on their timeline on Instagram to think, I've always needed this in my life.
Yeah.
But you aren't going to Google for that. So
I think it's so fun because it sometimes feels a bit counterintuitive for a lot of people, I think, for a lot of entrepreneurs starting a new business. Like you start something new and then the first thing you want is data. And then the question you ask yourself, how do I get to that data? Then like one of the answers is, of course, something like Google Ads, because that can give you data. Yeah. But then they do not think like about this next step after that, because it can only work if you already have data to make it work, right? So that is, I think, for a lot of people, super counterintuitive.
A cold start problem, basically.
Yeah. So search volume, I think, is one. But apart from that, it's really looking at your competitors. So if you are already thinking of, these kind of keywords will my ideal customer look for, then look at your competitors. What is their pricing like? What's their website like?
Yeah. Easy tools to figure that out?
Yeah. What we do, on one hand, you can, if you're already using a bit of Google Ads, but you can see who's also bidding on the campaigns, and you can look at their kind of campaigns and their kind of website. But yeah, usually we usually do just lots of trial and error and seeing what kind of things pop up in those kind of. So no, we're not using very typical tools for that. I'm sure they probably exist, but no, we don't do that.
Probably that good. So we need to get to that level first before we can do that. So I'd like to go a bit more into your role, right? I mean, you've been there now for a year. Your team is growing, revenue is growing. I can imagine there's also some very hard times as well. Or is the revenue just going up all the time?
The revenue is going up all the time, but so it is, but the profit isn't. So every time I hire people with growth in mind, so that means that every time I hire someone, I first have a loss because we don't have that much profit yet. No. So I think that's every time, finding that balance, and that is also the leap that you take and the chance that you take. For me, the biggest challenge is me personally not being affected by the amount of leads. I can really see my mood going up and down just as the leads are going up and down.
Yeah.
And I think, and I talk to other entrepreneurs and they recognize that. But and I think after a year and now having way more insight into, cash flow and data. It helps a lot more and you feel a bit more stable. But I think that's my biggest challenge to, when there's a month with less new clients, because that's the thing. We aren't just happy when we just stay like this. We want to grow.
Yeah.
And so that requires a specific mindset, and I'm not always in that mindset. So
And proactively, you are doing the sales, and of course your co-founders. Is there anybody else, or are you the one doing it?
So my co-founders aren't proactively doing sales. They pass through leads. But I have now hired, since 2 months ago, just for 8 hours a week, but an interim salesperson who's just calling for me. So that helps. And also someone that has a bit more work experience, so you can also look at his own connections and have a commission model behind that as well. So so slowly I hope I get in a year time I can say, I'm barely doing any sales, that someone else is doing that.
Is that something you want to get off your plate?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's the founder dilemma, right?
Yeah.
If the founder doesn't know how to sell it, how do you tell it to anybody else?
Yes.
But it doesn't scale if you can't scale this.
No.
Right,
no,
so.
exactly. And I think that's where it really helps that the specialists sell themselves. So I put them straight in front of the client and I say, you present your audit, you present your finance, you answer the questions. And I just sit here and smile and ask if you have questions afterwards. And so they say yes to the specialists. They don't say yes to me. So that helps a lot. So where I really need to do my sales technique is if they say, I have to think about it, that I'm on top of that kind of thing.
I like that.
Yeah.
And I just learned you're also sharing all of these learnings in your own podcast series.
Yes.
Tell us about it. Why are you doing a podcast when you're in ads?
Yeah, I think it all started with personal brand. So I've started on LinkedIn from day one, but I also realized that there's more to me than my LinkedIn posts, and I would like my clients to know a bit more about who I am and who Adverge is and what our ways of thinking are and what our reasoning is behind things. And also just to share the honest story. So that's potential clients. But what I see is the more listeners are just partners and other entrepreneurs. And so really, and the most reaction I get is when I meet someone for the first time that they say, but it's awesome listening to your podcast. So then you have a lot more basis to, a lot more of a foundation to continue the conversation. So
building more of the personal touch points,
so
that you can grow based on that.
Yeah.
You're totally open and honest in that podcast?
Yeah. Yes. And that means that I sometimes say I had a little cry.
Then I think we have a good question for you. Because we are always rounding off with a certain question, which is asked by one of our previous guests.
Yeah.
So we just wave goodbye to someone and he left you a question. So maybe it's nice to...
The question is from Camille. Camille used to be a pro basketball player, started OneFit, is now doing Voya, a travel AI companion, I would say. And he's all into sacrifice and, doing everything to win. So his question to you is, how much are you willing to sacrifice in order to win?
Yeah, interesting. I feel like I'm not a typical entrepreneur in answering that question, because I feel like, maybe that's an assumption, but I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs would say, anything. And that's where sometimes I start doubting, am I the right person for this job? Because I'm not willing to sacrifice anything.
Anything? That's a good answer.
Yeah, well, I thought about it and I thought, I was apparently willing to sacrifice security because I did my
all your savings.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, so I think my sense of security and my comfort, I was willing to sacrifice. But things like my time with my family and my friends, I'm not willing to sacrifice. I feel like that's essential. At all, it means that sometimes one night a week, I decide that I'm going to sit on the sofa and do some work, and sometimes go to a network event or something like that. But for example, my date night with my husband is, holy.
Totally.
It cannot be touched. And I feel like I'm more successful when I respect that time. And I feel like sometimes people say I work hard now and I can, enjoy it later. But I see so much, around me of people ill, etc., or dying or whatever. And I think, that's not my ambition. That's not my way of life.
I don't know if everybody thinks like that, but yes, it's very, it's black and white with these kind of things.
Yeah.
Well, interesting. I would say you've put your skin in the game. So that's a big part of what entrepreneurship is. And there's a lot of entrepreneurs not putting their money in. So doing that step, I mean, there should be no doubt that you're doing that.
Yeah.
So, there's limits.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's different for everybody, right? And it's working for you. So thank you for that. So if you could, do you have a question for our next guest?
Yes, I would like to know from the next guest, who is the person that has inspired that guest the most, and in what way?
Very interesting. Well, Marieke, thanks for joining our PlayPod.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was great to have you here and having a chat with you in this kind of setup.
Yeah.
So really enjoyed it to learn even more about you and about your business.
Thanks.
And let's continue this conversation later on.
Definitely.
But again, thanks.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for tuning in to the Playbook podcast again. With me, Michael, Sharon, we're the founders of Builders, where great entrepreneurs come to build great companies. Today we talked to Marieke. She's been the CEO, and I would say founder, but we've been walking around this subject quite a while, of a Google Ads agency. And it's always hard to scale with people, right? We want to do everything with tech these days, but the one thing I learned today is you can't always, right? So you can do a lot of stuff yourself, but at some point you need the experts as well. So a different business model, but interesting nonetheless. Thank you again for tuning in, and see you next time.